Ready? Hello, I'm John Mercer, and I'm going to tell you about my trip I took to Belize with Hawk Migration Association of North America. I got to the airport in Belize and went to find the van. On WhatsApp, they told me, look for the person with the sign. I tried and to contacted them a few times and finally texted, is anyone getting my messages? One of the other participants answered, yes. The next message, they told me they would be there in about 20 minutes. They had left without me. Not a great start, but what a trip this is going to be. The van is heading for the Pine Ridge Lodge in Pine Mountains. We stopped for lunch at a place called Cheers and let off the two ladies who were on the van by mistake, which may be one of the reasons they were confused and left me behind. At the lunch, our first birds, some yellow-headed parrots, were in the bushes. These birds are listed in my trip report on eBird as sensitive. So I guess we were lucky to find them so early. Also, a tropical mockingbird, much lighter than our northern mockingbird. After lunch, they made sure the invisible man, that's me, was in the van, and we headed to the lodge. Because of the delay coming back to get me, we got to the lodge just about in time for dinner and a nice screenshot. There's a nice screen enclosed dining room. Before dinner, we got our keys and headed to our cabins. This is the one I shared with Andrew Sturgis from Detroit River Hawk Watch. We had agreed to share some of the rooms on this trip so that one additional person, also named John and from New Jersey, and on the same flight I was on, could be added to the trip. Possibly another reason they were confused and forgot me. November 8th, we're going to bird the Pine Mountain Ridge area and around San Antonio Village. As you can see, it's kind of damp for being in the dry season. Our room was outside our room was very cooperative hummingbird that kept coming out to the same branches, so I had plenty of time to go back and get my camera and take pictures. Walking around the area, found a palm warbler, which was somewhat unexpected for this particular area. North and central Belize are about the southernmost extent of the palm warbler's range in the wintertime. We were flying down the road. Our guide, Ronnie, hollered, stop, and told John, the driver, to back up, back up. Somehow, Ronnie saw a lump in a distance that was a keel-billed toucan. Right then and there, I had a feeling that we had a good guide, and I was correct. He was terrific. As we were walking the trail to a vista where we hoped to see hawks migrating, we kept seeing these large masses in the trees, which Ronnie said are termite nests. Also along the trail were some interesting birds like this red-capped manakin, one of only two types of manakins in Belize, and one of the very many fascinating-looking birds of the area. We made our way out to the vista and settled in to see what will fly by. Since this was mostly a group of hawk watchers, we were used to this type of birding, and everyone was pretty good at spotting distant birds. At one point, a bat falcon flew by. The bat falcon is a small falcon. It will hunt bats, but really specializes in small birds. You can barely see it in this picture. They have a white necklace and a robin red belly. Then a king vulture showed up, America's largest vulture after the condors, an impressive bird with large white wing patches. They were very cooperative, soaring around us, and I got some really great pictures. Unlike our turkey and black vultures, which are also found in Belize, the king vulture is uncommon and usually only seen in wild, uninhabited areas. To add to the fun, a juvenile bird showed up, very plain compared to the striking adult. King vultures are frequently seen with black vultures, and sure enough, here comes the black vulture. After our first taste of hawk watching, we headed to San Antonio Village, where our guide Ronnie lives. We go to his house, where his wife and mother-in-law made us lunch. Some gorgeous looking and tasting tortillas. Ronnie's been working on his property to turn it into a great place for birds, so he walked the trails of his property and got good birds like this male red-throated ant tanager. The female is brown like our cardinals, and interestingly, the ant tanager isn't a tanager, which is of the Therapidae family, but is actually in the Cardinalidae family. A yellow olive flatbill with a laser light pointing out where it is for those who could not find it. The flatbill is in the flycatcher family. The pale-billed woodpecker found in the top of a dead snag. The pale-billed woodpecker is closely related to the now probably extinct ivory-billed woodpecker. Although they are large birds, they are mild-mannered and often pushed out of a nest hole where they are excavating by the collared aracari. The barred antshrike is typical of the antshrike family. They're usually found hiding in the thickets, but unlike other ant-following birds, it tends to not join the mixed flock of birds that follows an army ant swarm to pick off insects and small creatures that try to escape the ants. How about this cutie, the white-collared manakin? This is another type of manakin found in Belize. This one is a male. The females and young have olive green backs. The white-collared manakin is one of the birds that attracts mates at leks, where the male puffs out their neck feathers just like this one is demonstrating. A tawny-winged ant creeper, one of 8 types of wood creepers found in Belize. The tawny wing is a medium-sized wood creeper and fairly common, but hard to spot. They prefer to feed by following army ants, but have been known to follow troops of squirrel monkeys to catch what they scare up. A different one, the northern barred wood creeper, a much larger and less common wood creeper, but interestingly, often found near tawny wood creepers. Like the tawny, it follows army ants, so its diet is mostly insects, spiders, centipedes, and scorpions, but will also take small lizards if given the opportunity. A third wood creeper, the ivory-billed. This too is a larger wood creeper and is more common than the northern barred. If there is no army ant swarms to follow, it is often seen probing around inside bromeliads and epiphytes looking for insects or lizards. Rufous-tailed hummingbirds ended up being the most common hummingbird we saw on the trip, but always a challenge to photograph. They can be difficult to separate from the buff-bellied hummingbird, but prefer a moist area like the areas we were in, not the dry areas the buff-belly prefers. High up in some trees were yellow-throated euphonias. This euphonia is a frugivore that favors mistletoe seeds. It is also one of the birds that feeds its young, regurgitated fruit, and apparently no animal protein. After our walk, we visited enclosures where Ronnie's daughter is working with butterflies. Here, an owl butterfly. Now a malachite, very pretty with the green wing patches, probably great camouflage in the forest, not so great in the tent. Another malachite, pretty little butterfly. A harmonia tiger wing. A Mexican blue wing showing its blue topside, and now one showing its brown underside. Ronnie's wife gave us a demonstration on the traditional method of making tamales using a stone roller and a stone bowl to crush the corn. The next day, we leave Pine Mountain that are nearest to the northwest corner of Belize and going to Punta Gorda, which is on the southern coast. We will be staying at the Chabil Bee Lodge. It's a long drive, so we get lunch as soon as we get to Punta Gorda, where the Hawk Watch is located. The restaurant, like the Hawk Watch, is right on the water, a lovely setting. We didn't go to the Hawk Watch. Instead, we visited some sites for other birds, like a gray-crowned yellowthroat, similar to our common yellowthroat, but with a grayer crown. A laughing falcon was spotted in a tree, unfortunately not close. It gets its name from its call, which sounds like someone laughing. Eventually, it took off and flew by so I could get a so-so flight picture. We were lucky to get this mangrove vireo in the mangroves because the East Coast subspecies is usually not in the mangroves, but is found in scrubby fields and thickets. The West Coast subspecies is found strictly in mangroves. We did find this mangrove warbler, which isn't really a mangrove warbler. According to eBird, it's just a subspecies of the yellow warbler, but it sure doesn't look like our yellow warblers with that red head. Maybe someday they will split it off again. Yucatan vireo is closely related to our red-eyed vireo, but is only found on the eastern shore of the Yucatan Peninsula and the offshore islands and Grand Cayman. So we were lucky to get this bird. Our last bird for the day was a hooded oriole, seen standing in a puddle. The hooded oriole is a nectar robber. It will pierce the base of the flowers to get the nectar without contributing to spreading the pollen. Sneaky devil. November 10th, and we're going to visit the Hawk Watch and then go to learn about how Mayan chocolate is made. As you can see, the Hawk Watch is right on the coast to catch the birds that are traveling down the coast. This day, over 300 hook-billed kites flew by, but I got no good pictures. Before we headed to the watch, we did some birding at the lodge where we got stuff like the yellow-belly flatbill, a gartered trogon coming in for a landing. This is a male. The female has a gray back rather than the blue and black back this bird has, which unfortunately you can't see, and has less brightly colored belly. The gartered trogon eats more fruit than other trogons, but also insects and invertebrates. High in a tree, some golden hooded tanagers, another mostly frugivorous bird. They too will eat insects if given the opportunity. At the Hawk Watch, since we were near the coast, I got this mangrove swallow as it sailed by. It looks like a tree swallow, except for the white rump. The mangrove swallow is related to our tree swallow, but they're even more territorial, usually requiring at least 160 feet between nests and sometimes as much as 1,000 feet. 3 mangrove swallows on a wire, and you can see the white rump on the one on the left, the white line above the eye on the center bird, and flying above the sea with magnificent frigate birds, this being an adult male because it's all dark. I wandered around a field in front of the watch. In a small pond was a juvenile little blue heron. Another bird on a wire, this time a Max Titria, with an odd pink skin around the face. After several hours at the watch, we headed to the cacao farm where we had lunch, then took a tour. This is where the people lived who worked on and ran the farm. Not exactly the wealthiest people, but they seemed happy. The owner gave us a tour and constantly sang the praises of cacao and how eating it all his time makes him and his 11 children healthy. The farm looks more like a forest than a farm with a great mix of trees, making it good for birds. At the top of the hill, we got a demonstration on how the ancient Mayans processed cacao. Here, the beans are roasted. After roasting, the women use a stone and pestle, exactly the same tools as used to make tortillas, grinding the beans down into a paste. This finished product is then used to make drinks or in cooking. They made us a delicious chocolate drink. One of the birds found here was the lovely crimson-collared tanager. The last part of the Latin name Ramphicillus sanguinentis comes from the Latin adjective for bloodied, obviously referring to the red plumage. Not only cacao was grown here, but also mahogany trees. This is the huge mahogany seed of a mahogany tree. The mahogany was once a major export for Belize. Back in the lodge, we had time to kill, and I noticed a ladder, then realized it went to a zip line. So I had to try it. We wondered, how do you stop? It looks like you stop when you run into the trees, which turns out to be exactly correct. Too bad they didn't continue tape. It was a real trick getting down from the seat of this zip line. After dinner, we went out owling and found the striped owl. Everyone was pissed at me because apparently I didn't put the camera far enough out of the band window and blinded everybody with the flash. Oops, sorry, live and learn. Today we'll go to the Hawk Watch and then a bird around San Felipe Hills. I was a little grumpy. Rain was threatened and we had 300 kites yesterday. Let's go out and do some real birding. But the rest of the group was really into the hawks, so I spent time exploring the fields in front of the Hawk Watch. Walking through the fields, I found this bird, which created quite an argument on what it was. Eventually, they agreed this is a brown-crested flycatcher, which was rare for this area and a life bird for me. You can tell I'm a little bored. I'm taking moth and butterfly pictures. This is a plain longtail with only half a tail, identified by the length of the two white lines on the wing. This banded orange heliconia is beautiful and well worth wasting a couple electrons on. The white peacock is initially plain looking until you look closely and see the various patterns. This adult common black hawk landed in a tree behind the hawk lodge and allowed me to get a decent picture. Note, this is an adult because of the all black belly. Then I got a juvenile in flight. Like most juvenile hawks, it has a streaky belly. This osprey caught a skinny fish and was carrying it around behind us. We walked into town for lunch, and on the way back, a few yellow-crowned night herons were coming in for a landing in a tree. Back at the lodge before our next outing, one of the guys had found this white-lined bat on the exterior wall of his cabin. He came and got us all so we could go and see it. We headed out to the San Felipe area, a mix of forests and fields. Here we found things like another crimson-collared tanager, an immature or molting male blue-black grass quit. These birds are fairly common and had a distinctive buzzy call. One of our birds, the magnolia warbler, which is generally uses Central America and the Caribbean for their winter grounds. A common toady flycatcher, which is a tiny bird with a huge bill for its size. This is a bird that avoids dense interior woodlands, preferring edges and clearing. This black-headed trogon was not being very cooperative, but I finally got him. These birds build their nest by digging a hole in the arboreal termite nest that I showed you earlier and camping out in there. The juvenile common black hawk. The juveniles can be quite variable in the amount of streaking. This one is fairly light. The osprey flew by so close I had to get a picture. Ospreys are worldwide birds with a subspecies of osprey found on every continent except Antarctica. This white-tailed hawk gave me nice pictures of the underside and the top view. The angle of the left picture makes the tail look almost two-part, but it's really an optical illusion. Driving down the road, Ronnie spotted this crane hawk in a tree, so we stopped and tried to sneak up on it for some pictures. The crane hawk is interesting. It has long legs with knees that are double jointed. This allows the bird to reach into cavities and grope for his prey hiding in the cavities. Roadside hawks are appropriately named and were everywhere along the roads. We would just go sailing by them, and eventually someone asked Ronnie and John to stop so we could really get a good look at one. They obliged, and I got this great picture. One more morning at Chablis, then off for some additional stops before arriving just before dinner at the Boca Raton Resort in Mayflower, Boca Raton National Park, where we will spend the next 2 nights. First, though, more exploring around Chablis, we're hiding cinnamon Picard, one of the 4 types of Picards found in Belize. I was hoping to see collared araceres since I had seen them in Costa Rica, but didn't do eBird back then, so they weren't on my life list. Now they are. Unfortunately, this is the only araceri in Belize, so we'll need to go somewhere else to get my flame-billed araceri. We got very lucky and found this rare for this area black and white hawk eagle. This was a striking bird, and even Ronnie was excited to see this bird. They will take other birds up to the size of an araceri. The dusky antbird is one of those birds you hear, but because their skulking thickets and tangles are hard to see clearly, this was the best I could do. This was my room for 2 nights in the Boca Raton. We were supposedly here for the dry season, but this year the weather was reversed. Belize had a drought all summer, and it finally started to rain just before we got there. The locals were happy for the rain, but we weren't. Ronnie did a masterful job of working around the rain. We stayed in at one point to miss this. This puddles this created came in handy eventually. Once we got back out and even closer to collared araceri, These are not small birds. They are 15 to 16 inches long. This may be a male. The difference is in the length of the bill. The male's is longer. And a really nice look at another of the 10 woodpeckers found in Belize, of which I now have all but one on my life list. This one is the appropriately named chestnut-colored woodpecker. Between this trip and my trip to Veracruz, I have all 4 of Belize's trogons on my life list. You may have seen this one before, but how can you not take pictures of something this beautiful? Stopping back for lunch, one of the guys found this huge staghorn beetle on his sandal. This really gives you a perspective how big this bug is. What a monster. Off to the wetlands for different types of birds, like this royal tern with its fancy hairdo. A spotted sandpiper on the dock. Not exactly the place you'd expect to see a spotted sandpiper, but nice for photography. Sanderlings are the world's traveling bird and can be found on almost any sandy beach in the world. So what is this group doing landing on a dock? What's so special about this dock? After dinner, we went out again for owls and got this spectacle owl. Because of all the rain, it was challenging navigating in and out of the lodge on their dirt road, which was very muddy. Coming back in, we got stuck in the mud and they had to bring a Toyota Hilux truck out to pull us out. Unfortunately, that wasn't enough. So we had to get out and help push. You know the old saying, no good deed goes unpunished. I had just put these pants on to be used for the rest of the trip. Bummer. The worst part is they made us take all our gear out with us to lighten the load, so my camera and binocular were around my neck, looking just like this too. I made good use of the puddles, cleaning up my shoes and gear. Today we're moving on to the last hotel, the Crooked Tree Wildlife Sanctuary. But first, some more birding plus a visit to the Belize Zoo. On our typical pre-breakfast bird walk, this flock of olive-throated parakeets were in a tree with a group of golden-hooded tanagers and either a gray-headed or a female western tanager. As we sat down to breakfast, this hooded warbler came in for a visit, maybe looking for a handout or something. I chased this little bugger around for quite a while to get a picture to have it just be another rufous-tailed hummingbird in dark conditions, but nice against the flowers. One of our stops was at the Belize Zoo, which was started by a woman who was the animal wrangler for a documentary being done on Belize. The animals used were mostly unfit for the wild, so instead of putting them down, she started this zoo. It was small but nice, and it felt good supporting this worthy cause. Later, we stopped at a shrimp farm where birds like this yellow-crowned night heron like to hang around the ponds. The yellow crowns apparently like to feed on crabs. A trio of wood storks put in an appearance, flying low over the ponds. A young or female merlin shot over the ponds, hunting shorebirds, and I was a little late getting only a tail shot. In the mangroves around the ponds, I found another mangrove warbler. On the roof of the shed was a laughing falcon that was very tolerant of me sneaking up on it to try and get better and better picture. It never flew off, just moved to the other side of the building. So I got this nice picture. In the distance was a slightly different looking great blue parrot. Note how white the head is. Apparently, this is the wordsman's subspecies of great blue found in very few places, usually Florida, and is possibly a mix of the great white heron and the great blue. But science hasn't figured out where it fits into the picture yet. A close white ibis, and it's time to call it a day. We are now at our last place. The rain has stopped and we're treated to a rainbow as we take our morning walk around the grounds. An appropriately named yellow-headed parrot flew by. They are considered scarce and localized. Interestingly, the yellow-headed parrots in Belize and Honduras show less yellow on their heads than those in other areas. The male vermilion flycatcher is a handsome fellow. He really jumps out at you with a beautiful vermilion red body and dark wings. A pair of neotropical cormorants, which are differentiated from our double-crested by the smaller size, longer tail, and V-shaped border on their chin patch. A pair of acorn woodpeckers, which are noted for storing their acorns in holes they hammered into trees or posts, or in this case, telephone poles. This pink dove is a ruddy ground dove, one of 4 types of ground dove and 13 species of doves found in Belize. Finally, another Yucatan endemic, the Yucatan jay, pretty plain looking. This is an adult with no yellow on the beak. It takes 4 years to get full adult plumage. This pair of Yucatan jays are both juveniles because they have yellow bills. They are part of a group that was playing with a feather, passing it back and forth. The rufous-browed pepper shrike isn't really in the shrike family. It is actually much closer to the vireo family. Therefore, like most vireos, it will eject cowbird eggs from its nest. Another Yucatan endemic, the Yucatan woodpecker, showed up. They're found only on the Yucatan Peninsula from Mexico and just reaching about halfway down Belize. They look a lot like our red-bellied woodpeckers. We are at about the southernmost extreme for these endemics. Gray hawk is a small boodio found from northern Costa Rica up through Central America and along both coasts of Mexico above the Yucatan, just barely reaching into Texas. This large red dragonfly is most likely a male tropical king skimmer. The females are brown. Flying down the road at high speed, Ronnie spotted this jabiru, so we stopped. Jabiru is a huge bird in the stork family and quite distinctive with a large bill, black head and neck, and white body. Another interesting butterfly, the Juditha cacona. You would think that this was its Latin name, but apparently it's its common name. I had to feed her at the lodge a rufous-tailed hummingbird quite close so I could get a very detailed picture. Sitting at the picnic tables by the lodge, this limpkin came quite close. So close, I had to crop the picture vertically to fit into eBird. Otherwise, it was too big. The limpkin prefers to eat snails, and most of them have bills that are curved to the right. Help them get snails out of their shells. Although this beautiful fellow is often found close to the ground hunting for insects, they tend to nest from 6 to 20 feet up in a tree, and occasionally as high as 50 feet. If part of the insect diet is indigestible, it coughs up pellets, similar to the way owls do. An adult little blue heron, although we do not see these often, they're here because we are at the very north end of the range. This is one of the few heron species that was not decimated by the milliner's trade in the early 1900s, saved because women wanted white feathers, not blue feathers. Of course, the ubiquitous turkey vulture, one of my favorites because they are so ugly, they are beautiful, especially in flight when the sun catches them just right and the many shades of brown on their wings are highlighted. A solitary sandpiper was walking in a cove near some rowboats. Solitary is a good name for this bird. Unlike most sandpipers that migrate and even nest in groups, this bird tends to go its own way, in other words, solitarily. The eye-ring is a great field mark for the solitary sandpiper. A very close tropical mockingbird. You can't see it in this picture, but they lack the large white patches on the wings that our northern mockingbird sports. Although their range rarely connects, their voices are similar. The ferruginous pygmy owl is often seen during the day, and local guides use their calls to attract other birds. That also attracts the local owls, so they're fairly easy to find. The great kiskadee is the middle-sized bird of the trio of look-alike flycatchers, the boatbill and the social being the other two. If you're wondering why then a great kiskadee, that is because there is a lesser kiskadee found only in South America. Our last day, off to the airport around 10:30, but before we go, a pre-breakfast boat ride, which was fantastic. Beautiful morning light on our lodge, yielded a nice picture. A female ringed kingfisher that is red belly flew by. You can tell it is a female because of the large blue bib with a white line. The male has a smaller bib. The ringed kingfisher is the largest kingfisher in the Americas. As usual, the boat allows you to get much closer to some birds like this neotropical cormorant, which is with its white V around the chin patch. Snail kites were flying around. Notice the deeply hooked bill. It's an adaptation that allows the snail kite to reach into snail shells and pluck the meat out. Snails are their principal food for this bird of prey. Black-collared hawk is an attractive raptor of wetlands where it perches in trees, then swoops down to snag its favorite prey, a fish or frogs. This is an adult. The juveniles are duller and closer to brown than orange. This bird was the one that excited our guide Ronnie the most. The only time he ever sees it is if he's chasing it through the bog, watching it fly a short distance, then land, and he does this over and over until it's tired. Then he can get a look. This one was just walking around on the lily pads out there in the open and in great light. The red-lored parrots are large parrots, usually seen in pairs early or late in the day. There are 3 subspecies, this one being the yellow-cheeked. Generally, they tend to fly high in the air, so I was lucky that these were so close. A quartet of black-belly whistling ducks. This species is slowly moving north, becoming more common in Arizona, Texas, and Florida, mostly because people have been putting up nest boxes, although they will also nest on the ground in colonies. A merlin went shooting by, and as usual with merlins, by the time you see it and identify it, it's almost gone. And they are very fast-moving birds. Therefore, most of my merlin pictures are from the rear. The bare-throated tiger heron came flying by. In this picture, you can really see the naked yellow throat skin that gives this bird the bare-throated part of its name. And then land in a tree where you can see, get a feel for the length of the neck and how short the legs are compared to other herons. The throat doesn't jump out at you in this picture. The boat-billed heron is a bizarre-looking nocturnal heron which feeds on the edges of lakes and rivers. They roost communally. There were at least 3 here. This oddly shaped bill is where it gets its name. A black-collared hawk in flight is very pretty. In this photo, you can actually see the black collar that gives it its name. Generally, it's hard to see the collar. Now a side view, beautiful because this bird puts on quite a show for us. It's very difficult deciding which picture to use. You can see we covered a good part of Belize as we traveled. And a summary of the trip, I had 37 checklists, 230 species, 61 of them were life birds. I had 142 bird species pictures, 56 were life pictures. So life birds with pictures for the trip were 98.8%. Total life birds for me at this time, 1,087. Total life pictures, 1,010. Life birds with pictures, 92.9%. Thank you for listening.